Welcome to Feature Fridays. My name is Guy Bartram. I'm the Product Marketing Director for VMware Cloud Director Availability and Cloud Director, and joined again today with Romain. So Romain, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi. My name is Romain Decker, and I'm a Staff Technical Product Manager in the VCPP program, and I cover there everything networking for our cloud providers.
Excellent. Thanks, Romain. And today we're going to be talking about the NSX-V to T migration tool, specifically the new version, which came out in May, which is version 1.2.1.
Yes.
So let's start at the top. What's new in 1.2.1?
So the first, I get questions about the why that specific version number, because in the past we had 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, and so on, and we switched. Yeah. So the goal is to ultimately have some similarities between the dot version from VCD and the dot version of the NSX migration tool. So it's not completely aligned yet, but it will be with next version. So you will see like an alignment between the VCD version, dot version, the dot number, and the migration tool dot number. So 1.2.1, it's not that it's a smaller update. It's just for that reason that we have that version. So it came out May 13th. So almost 3 weeks ago now. So I will start from the bottom. So we have some usability features, like we have end-to-end rollback. It creates additional requirements on NSXT for you, such as bridging transport zone and so on. And then we support a use case that was asked multiple times. It's the support of directly connected or VDC network migration. So this was not possible before because it was only introduced in VCD 10.2.2, which was released in April. And the major enhancements for the 1.2.1 version of the migration tool is the assessment mode.
Yeah, so let's just rewind 2 seconds. So from a version perspective, obviously we got 1.2.1 is out now.
Yes.
Kind of aligned with 10.2.2 or VCD, I guess, in terms of that the dot release semantics. But we've got 10.3 obviously coming in VCD later in this year. Will we be expecting another drop of the migration tool in that respect, aligned to the VCD release?
Yes. So just after the GA of VCD 10.3, we will have a NSX migration 1.3. We don't know the exact date yet, but it will be some days or a few weeks just after, because we do have to do interop testing and a few additional development after the GA of VCD.
So fundamentally then, just to switch back to 1.2.1, not much has changed in terms of the migration. There's a few additional pieces, like you said, direct connect networks, but the whole kind of mechanism of migration, that migration of single tenant time, improved rollback of the migration capability, that's kind of what's in 1.2.1. But the major new bit is the assessment capability.
Yes, and the tool works the same as before. It just has a few additional features. The 1.3 version will be a little different because it will introduce additional capabilities, and I can talk to maybe about that at the end of the recording.
Okay, cool. So you have a couple of slides, I believe.
Yeah. So regarding NSXV and NSX-T migration, so VMware developed several toolings and strategies to migrate. And we have like the NSX migration coordinator, and then some scenarios like coexistence, lift and shift, and other things. And although those are working well when you have a private cloud, not multi-tenant, like vSphere environments, potentially even VRA with out-of-the-box blueprints, those methods are not useful when you have VCD on top of SDDC. Because VCD has that tight relationship with NSXV. If you just use one of the other methods to migrate, you will basically break the interaction from VCD and NSX. So that's the reason why the CSBU developed the VMware NSX migration for VMware Cloud Director. That's the official name. It's a bit long for trademark. But so it's a migration tool. It's provided as a VMware software with GSS support, a lifecycle, its own development team, and so on. And it will allow you to migrate an NSXV environment used in VCD into NSXT in an automated way and with limited downtime.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So in summary, then you can't, or you shouldn't, if you've got NSX-V with VCD, you shouldn't attempt to do a migration not using this tool, because you're going to break the relationships that VCD understands of NSX.
To the exception if you want to do everything manually. I have heard about some providers or some VCD consumers that just want to just recreate their topology in NSXT and just recreate everything and move manually the workloads. But I mean, it's a lot of work. You will have downtime for sure, and you may miss something.
Yeah.
So this is really the recommended way.
Okay.
And it's an external tool, so it has to be downloaded from vmware.com/downloads. You go to VCD, to the VCD page, and then in the drivers and tools tab, you will find this product. It's provided as a zip or as a tar.gz for Linux. So you can run it from Windows or Linux.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to have access to VCD, both NSX, so VMT, and vCenter server. And so the migration is always done from a VCD point of view and from a system administrator point of view, so from a provider admin point of view. So for example, I have someone sent me an email yesterday about my provider. I'm a provider. I have done some connectivity outside VCD. Will it be migrated? So they have made changes and added edges outside VCD. So no, it will not be migrated because the migration tool is executed from a VCD point of view. So it will not be aware of those changes made outside VCD. And the 4 design principles of the migration tool is that it's completely automated. So it does not only move the workloads, but it also replicates completely your NSXV topology into an NSXT topology. It migrates metadata, storage profiles, policies, anti-affinity rules, the workloads, the services that you have configured on the edge gateways, the connectivity with the external networks, IPs, and so on. So everything from A to Z. It's granular. So if you compare this to a tool like the migration coordinator from NSXT, which migrates a complete NSXV environment in one maintenance window, here it's granular. You migrate all VDC by all VDC, meaning that the maintenance window is defined by all VDC or potentially by tenant. And it has a limited downtime. So the migration tool will automatically establish layer 2 bridging between the source VXLAN or VLAN or VDC networks and Geneve destination of VDC networks. So east-west communication is maintained. North-south, at some point, we have to do a switchover. So we have to cut connectivity for a moment, but it's quite limited. And we also move the workloads when everything is prepared using cross vMotion. So vMotion plus storage vMotion is relevant. And the final principle is that it's non-destructive, meaning that at the end, the migration tool stops and exits and gives you the opportunity to validate that everything is running as expected. So to be fair, we never encountered a migration where something was not configured as expected, but it's more targeted towards the application teams. So if you do the migration hand in hand with the tenant admin, that he wants maybe to validate that his application is running fine, well, you have the opportunity to do an automatic rollback. So it will just rewind completely what it has done. So you don't destroy the source environment until you specifically ask the migration tool with a last command to do what we call a cleanup. when we do a cleanup, it will finalize the migration, moving the catalogs, destroying the source environment, destroying the bridging, and renaming the target objects. So those are the 4 design principles. And I know we just discussed about that, but that's what's new for the NSX migration for VCD 1.1. So the assessment mode, it's the major one, and we can dig into that in a minute. Direct network migration and usability, which is like a common bucket for things that we improve, but more in the backend. So it's not additional features that we support to migrate. It's more how the tool behaves and what kind of readiness or features that can help you. Like, for example, it will create a bridging transport zone for you. It will do end-to-end rollback and so on.
Yeah. Okay.
The assessment mode now it's quite interesting, and so I don't like sometimes. I know that it's one size doesn't fit all, so that's why we provide an opinionated, I would say, way of migrating, because we have so many moving parts to handle at the same time, like vSphere, NSXV, NSXT, VCD, NSX-ALB, if you have some load balancing. And so we provide this mechanism of migration, but to understand really what could block a specific provider for the migration, we developed the assessment tool. Before that, we had the pre-check, which was validate everything before migration, but you had to be in specific VCD versions to have NSXT installed, deployed, and configured, and so on. So the pre-check is targeted to be run just the minute before the migration. It's to validate that everything is settled to have a successful migration. The assessment, it's a different mindset. It can be run today in any VCD 10.x environment, and you don't need anything else. Just a VCD API endpoint, and it will run. And the goal is to understand really if you should migrate now, or if you can migrate tomorrow with some mitigation, or if you have to wait a few weeks to have the next version of the migration. So the phased approach is for all providers not consuming VCD. Well, you can use the standard NSBU migration techniques, tooling, and so on to migrate already today. For our provider that are using VCD, like in how we call that in a standard way, it's not negative, but it's a typical environment, and we have a lot that run it like this. You can already use the latest version, so the 1.1 version, to migrate today. And for those who have some advanced feature, well, you need to review the features used. And instead of reading through the user guide and seeing, like, comparing which feature you may or may not have, we required an automated way of discovering what is configured at the ORG-VDC level, because we should not forget that the tenants are most of the time, should I say that, autonomous. So it's the service are provided as a service. So as a system admin, you may not know what the tenant admin configured.
Yep.
And so to review the features used, well, there are 2 options. Either you have things that can be mitigated today, simple things like we don't support empty VApp. So if the tool discovers that there are empty VApp on the source of VDC, well, the tool will prevent the migration because the API doesn't support the migration of empty VApp. So easy mitigation is that you can just create a dummy VM, migrate, remove it, or delete the empty VApp, and so on. So those are the manual adjustments for today, or you can wait also for the next version of the migration tool. But how to know which features you may have to mitigate, or you may have to wait for the next version. And for that, we created the automatic assessments.
So if I've got an environment and I run the assessment tool and it tells me there's some items here that aren't supported in the current 1-to-1 migration tool. And let's say it's something easy that I could rectify manually and it's not a problem. I can then run the 1-to-1 migration tool. I'll run it in checker mode. It will probably throw an error in checker mode saying, actually this bit's going to be missed, or will it, because it only knows what it knows at that point, will it do the check based on what it knows in the tool? The assessment tool could be telling me that I must do this manual change afterwards. Can I then run the migration using the tool and then do the change afterwards myself? Is that the tool going to allow me to override any checker issues?
Yeah, the assessment mode is very powerful. So it can run on a specific org VDC. It can run for a specific tenant or a list of tenants or a list of org VDC. It's very granular. I mean, you can mix and match what you want. Or the default mode, if you want, you can just run it for a complete VCD instance. You just provide the API endpoint, the user with which you want to connect, and it will ask interactively the password, and it will just loop on all NSXV org VDC, and then it constructs the reports. And it provides two reports, a detailed one that is more strategic or for the long term, like you have a list of org VDC, and if they can be migrated, if they cannot be migrated, what's the reason? And so we have all the, so here I cropped the screenshot, but you have a lot more column with all specific features that could potentially be mitigated or that could block. So it's just Booleans. So for each org VDCs that are in lines, we also have additional interesting things like the number of org VDC networks to bridge for each, the number of concerned VMs, and so on. So that's more like to prepare the migration specifically by org VDC. And then we have a detailed one, or summary report, which is completely anonymized. So it doesn't have any information except some technical information. So it's designed to be handed over to VMware or to us so that we can help you to plan or to define a migration plan in the short term. And it also helps, what's more important, it helps us to understand where we should target our efforts, our development efforts for the future. Which features should we first support in the next version and in the version after, and so on and so on. And the summary report have like some general data, like how many time it has taken to do the assessment, like the version of VCD. And again, the assessment, it only requires VCD 10.x, any version of 10.x. And then all your VDC will be categorized in 4 categories. The first one is can be migrated today. So those you can already start and migrate those today. So everything that you have configured for those VDC are compatible with the 1-to-1 version. Those that can be migrated with some additional preparation work. Those are where you have easy configuration that we don't support, but that are easy enough to be mitigated manually, like empty VApps, fast provisioning on the VDC, things like that. The next one is that the automated migration is not supported with the current version. So for example, the most common one is that we don't support yet the migration of shared networks. So that's the most common one. And so for that, but the org VDCs are classed as can't be migrated today, but they will be able to be migrated later with a future version. We also have an org VDC not accessible for assessment. If you have an org VDC that has been not in a healthy state during the assessment, or that is busy or something like this, it's to prevent the assessment to exit and to throw an error, and we just put those org VDC on the side as not accessible. You can rerun the assessment later and assess again those all VDCs.
Yeah.
And all the features that we don't support yet are classed in two severities: the ones that can be mitigated and the ones that are actually blocking. So that you can see really if you have no free interface on Edge Gateway, fast provisioning, empty VOps, you do things as easy as you don't have defined a name for the gateway, for the firewall rules. For each rules, NSXT need to have a name and so on. So you can define dummy name or just random names for the source and so on. So those are easy things to mitigate before actually doing the migration.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this is the report then that we want to get visibility on, we VMware, so we can help prioritize based, I guess, on the volume of blocking or mitigated responses that we get back, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if I just show you now here how it's working. So it's not a different tool. So the assessment feature is just provided as a new CLI, well, not a new CLI command, but a new CLI argument.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just type the, just increase the size. Okay, so the usage for the assessment is just --v2t assessment. And as usual, we provide an assessment a sample file for the assessment. So a YAML file, we define how to do the assessment of with a YAML file. So the sample is just an example. So the important thing is how to connect to VCD. So it's just the IP or the FQDN of the API endpoint. And then you have optional arguments, depending if you want to, like, for example, inspect a list, a single or a list of orgs. So you have a tenant 1 to 10, and you want just to assess those. So here is a list. Or if you want to assess a specific list, so single or a list of org VDCs. By default, we recommend to run for complete VCD environment, because then you will have a report, especially the summary report, that will be more relevant for planification. It's quite fast to run. So I've got reports from 15 production environments in the past week or two. And the average time to assess one org VDC is between 60 and 90 seconds.
Okay.
So it depends on the number of edge gateways and the number of VApps that you have, because we have to do loops of API queries on each of those items. But it's in average, it's between 60 and 90 seconds. And one important thing to mention is that it doesn't touch the environment. It's just reading the configuration. It doesn't harm the environment. It's just doing get API calls. So if I launch an example.
So just, sorry, in that example file you got there, so you've obviously taken out the line items for tests in the file that you're going to use and the organization. So it won't read those if there's nothing in there, right? You just have to nullify.
No, yeah. You can just remove that. So for example, in this one, I removed. I just have on my API endpoint my username. I don't want to verify. You can also provide the certificate path, so the chain, to validate the connectivity to avoid man-in-the-middle attacks. I usually don't verify, especially for just read API requests. But you are free to define true here. It's even by default, and provide your certification. Anyway, so if I take this one, I want to assess this environment. I think I have created just one org and 3 org VDCs as an example.
Okay.
So I launch my assessment with, well, the run command, the file path to my YAML file, and just --v to the assessment. It will ask interactively for the password of VCD, and then it will run the assessment.
I see it's logging out there. So this is quite, this is providing some quite high level, it looks like, predefined output here. Is there a way of getting a more verbose mode around how many APIs are, watching the API calls going through?
You can watch the log. So the log will contain the API request. A little more detail. It will obviously not dump everything, but it's quite verbose.
Yeah.
So I have 1, 2, 3, and it should finish now because I only have 3. And it will tell you in which folder, what's the file name for the report at the end.
Okay.
And it's all in a /reports folder. And I did that just before the recording, so it avoids me to transfer the files to my laptop. But basically, the detailed report.
Here we go. I'm done.
So here we are. So you just have like a high-level overview of what has been done.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, the report that came out of this is this. So I have in lines, and again, this is the detailed report. In lines, I have the all VDCs, a UUID that's just potentially for filtering data, the status, the number of concerned VMs by all VDC, and RAM, the number of networks to bridge. And then based on can be migrated with additional preparation work, or if I had one that would be automated migration, not possible today, I would have the exact cause with the Boolean here. So here I have fast provisioning enabled on that particular one. So I could just disable fast provisioning, migrate, and do re-enable it after, or leave it as is. So this is giving you the information specifically for an VDC.
Right, but the columns there, so where you would be looking for a true.
Yes.
Right. Okay, because these are things that aren't supported by the tool at the moment in 1.2.1.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And the other one is the summary report that just provides me, like, it's coming from the same content, but it's presented in a different way because we want to have a look holistically at the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I have one or 2 VDCs that can be migrated and one that requires additional prep work. Here I see that I have one with fast provisioning, but let's imagine that you have, 1,000 VDCs. You will see that you have 15 that have fast provisioning. There is no way in this report you can know which one. So you have to switch to that one and filter by, and use here the filter on the fast provisioning column. And so that's an example based on my lab, but we have, this is a real example that I have. So that was done like a few weeks back, 1 month back, on a 10.2 on almost 340 VDCs. And so I have like almost 300 could be migrated today. And I have some that are using things like port group backed network pool or share networks, independent disks, and so on.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is really anonymized. I mean, we just have the VCD UUID, which we cannot really do anything with it. It's more for you for the future if you have multiple VCD instances, so that you can find the exact reports again.
Awesome. This is going to be really useful. I can see how this will, we kind of should have started with this at the beginning, but this is really good to see. So this is going to help our providers understand not only what they can migrate, what they can migrate with a bit of mitigation, but what that mitigation is, and also help us understand how to prioritize, what features we need to focus on for the next release.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
And so what now? Well, there are no reasons, in my opinion, and even if I may have subjective point of view on that, I think everyone should start planning, at least planning for the NSXT migration.
Yep.
There are no reasons to postpone. If you are stuck or if you have questions, don't hesitate. You can reach out to your account teams, your SA, or even us. You can find us on social medias, on the YouTube comments, and really start assessing your environments. That's really important. The feature is really helpful, and the first feedback that we got from the providers that tested it is that it's awesome. So you can assess your environments, and if you don't mind, really potentially sending your assessment reports to that email. So v2t-assessments@vmware.com. So it's a mailbox that the PM and myself are reading, and we just send the summary report. You don't need to send the detailed report. And if we have the summary report, if we see which features are blocking most of the provider, it will really help us to prioritize and to influence the roadmap of the migration tool and even to VCD in the future. Because there are things that are not supported for the migration because they are not supported in VCD yet. If I take the example of the app edge, they are not supported in VCD yet. Thus, we cannot migrate if you have the app edges. It will be supported in 10.3. So just after with the NSX migration tool 1.3, we will be able to migrate those. But there are others where we just have questions, and talking to providers, it's great talking to you, but it's only giving us some information. And as mentioned earlier, the tenants are usually autonomous, creating their services and deploying stuff and configuring stuff. So you may not know what's exactly configured.
Yeah. This is, I mean, if you're a partner watching this and you've got an NSX and VCD environment today, this is going to help you, and really, we can only be as good as the information we know, right? We've been, for a long time, we talk to partners all the time, and a lot of our roadmaps are affected by what partners are asking for. This will give us the ability to see what's actually being used and the volume of which is being used at, which is going to help us prioritize new stuff for those features, as well as migrating them, obviously. So I think this is twofold. My ask to the partners is please, please, please run the assessment. Send us the high-level report to this email address as soon as you can. The deadline for NSXV support is fast rolling up on us at January 2022. So we need to be, you need to be getting these assessments in as soon as possible, because the faster we can build it into the migration tool, the less work you're going to have to do. Okay, brilliant. Well, is there anything else to cover on the tool, Romain? I think that's a good kind of call to action for the end of it.
No, I will just close by saying that we are actively already developing. We are already 2 or 3 sprints into the development of the next version. And I will just leave it there, but we will support shared networks migration by introducing a new feature to migrate multiple old VDC at the same time. Independent disks, the app edge migration, migration to a different vCenter, because for the moment, the clusters needs to be managed by the same vCenter, and much more. So the next version will really be cool.
Excellent. Good, good. Brilliant. Well, thank you for also putting up your email there as well for people to reach out to you directly if they've got challenges. And of course, we have the Slack channel, which is available to all partners. I'll put the link in the description as well. So that's another source of really fairly instant kind of community interest and feedback, which is great. Romain, thank you so much today. Super impressed to see this going in this direction, and it's going to make everything a lot easier for everyone. So it's brilliant news, and really happy to see that. For our partners watching, please run the assessment, send us the high-level report. It will help you in the long term and help us certainly. Thank you very much, Romain. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.